So James will be director. Yes, James, Harry, yeah. And Colin McGurty, councillor, and Jim Griffiths, the applicant. Yes, okay, a few of those, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So the first application is 291 Hills Road. The site comprises of a detached property within a generous plot on the northwestern corner of the junction of Queen Edith's Way. Existing property is a substantial Edwardian building currently in use as a single residential unit. Hills Road forms a major route into the city, and this character of this part of Hills Road is mainly residential. Existing building is not a listed building and is not a building of local interest either. The site also does not fall within a conservation area. There's a tree preservation order on the site which covers about 11 trees on the southern and northern sides. This was agreed with the tree officer on the first plan application. The site falls outside the controlled parking zone and the air quality management zone, and there's no other relevant site constraints. So here's site photographs, and also a photograph from Hills Road and Queen Edith's Way. So the proposal is for a residential development containing 14 flats, comprising of 8 two-bed units and 6 one-bed units, along with access, car parking and associated landscaping following demolition of the existing building. Members may recall that the plan application was presented to members on the 29th of August 2018, and members resolved to grant plan permission at that time. Members have also been advised that the proposal fell below the relevant affordable housing threshold contained in Policy 55 of the Cambridge Local Plan 2006, and no affordable housing was required. Members may also recall on the same day, 29th of August 2018, the inspector's report into the then emerging 2018 local plan was published. This had an effect requiring full weight to be afforded to the new policies in the Cambridge Local Plan 2018. This fact was not known to officers or members at the time of the planning committee. Following the 29th of August planning committee, the applicants were informed that despite the resolution of the committee to approve the application, the approval could not be issued due to a change in circumstances and the weight that now needs to be afforded to policies in the 2018 local plan. This is why the application is before members again today. The key change between the 2006 and 2018 local plan policies, and also the introduction of further national plan policy, is the reduction of the affordable housing threshold from 15 to 10. Proposal for 14 flats represents a net gain of 13 dwellings on the site, which is now above the threshold, and hence affordable housing is required by policy. The applicants have stated that the unviable to provide any affordable housing and have submitted a viability assessment to demonstrate this. Council appointed an independent consultant to review the submitted viability assessment. The consultant concluded that the scheme could not support affordable housing. Following discussions with the applicant in regards to various points, the report was revised and the deficit generated was increased. Viability assessment and independent review were published on the website, and local residents were consulted. A number of local residents have raised concerns about the viability assessment. However, the assessment has been independently reviewed by a consultant appointed by the council, and we have set the findings of this independent review. It's worth noting the applicant was kept at arm's length from this process and only became aware of which consultant was used at the point independent review was published to the public. The Section 106 agreement should also include a clawback clause. This clause would ensure that if the development delivers more revenue than predicted within the viability assessment, the applicant will need to pay a financial contribution to the council for the delivery of affordable housing off-site. So as previously mentioned, the application was before Plan Committee on 29th of August last year, and members resolved to grant plan permission. Since then there's been a change in local policy. While the majority of the policies have not significantly changed, there's been an introduction of new policies in relation to space standards, private external amenity space and accessible homes. So I'll just go through the proposed ground floor and basement plans. So you've just got so as you can see, there's a basement car park, and then there's also ground floor accommodation. Alongside first and second floor accommodation as well. All the units either comply or exceed the space standards, and all the proposed units will have direct access to an area of private amenity space in the form of either a balcony or a terrace. You can see balconies are here, and then also some have terraces, quite a large terrace down here. Local residents have also raised concerns about whether the scheme complies with building regulations M42, especially in regards to the basement access to the lift. I'll just go back one slide. Following this, the applicant has engaged with the council's building control team in order to address this. Following these discussions, the applicant has amended the basement floor plan, and the building control team have accepted these changes. So the main part to look at is this access from the car park to the lift, and this is what's been changed, so these two doors here. However, this is a building regulations matter and is also controlled through the use of a standard accessible homes condition that complies with policy 51. Just go through the elevations. These are the west and south elevation. The south elevation at the top is the Queen Edith's Way, and the bottom elevation, which is the west elevation, is from Hills Roads. We've also got the north and east elevations. These face towards the rear of the site, so you can't see these from the public realm. These are the CGI images that were provided by the applicant. So that's from Queen Edith's Way, and that's from Hills Roads. So it's to be noted that the original application, 17-13-71-4, which was refused by Planning Committee back in April last year, was refused for 4 reasons. One was the failure to provide any affordable housing. The second one was inconvenient and poorly accessible resident cycle parking. The third was cramped accommodation, and the fourth was a lack of visitor car parking. However, all of these reasons have been addressed in the current application. A viability assessment has been submitted, and that demonstrates that it's not viable to provide affordable housing on the site. Cycle parking is now located on the ground floor store. So if I just go back to the So cycle parking is just, bear with me 1 second. It's in here. And then also all units either comply or exceed internal space standards now, and 1 visitor car parking space is provided at ground level, and 2 also provided in the basement. This shows that all 4 reasons have been overcome in this application. It's to note that the external design of the proposed building before members today is the same design that's been before Planning Committee twice. It's not changed since the original application, which was the one in April last year. Planning Committee has twice found the design and impact on the character of the area to be acceptable, once in April last year and once in August last year. Trees, so there's no update in regards to trees since August last year. For clarity, last August the tree officer raised no objection to the proposed tree removals and recommended a tree protection methodology report to ensure retaining trees are not significantly impacted during demolition or construction. Likewise, an ecological construction method statement condition is also recommended to ensure any protected species are found mitigated during the application. So I would urge members to consider the proposal against the new issues raised, which are the viability assessment, space standards in regards to policy 50, external amenity space again in regards to policy 50, and accessibility, which is policy 51. To conclude, the applicant has demonstrated not be viable to provide affordable housing as part of the development, and that the proposal complies with the 2018 Cambridge Local Plan. The officer recommendation is approval, subject to the prior completion of the Section 106 agreement to secure planning obligations, delegated authority to pursue a viability review mechanism, which is to do with the clawback clause, and secure commuted financial contribution for off-site affordable housing provision if required, and the conditions set out at the end of the committee report. I've just got an update on the conditions. We'd like to add 1 further condition regarding boundary treatment. It was a mistake, it was missed off. A condition regarding electric vehicle charging points. The applicant is engaged in discussions regarding this. It's possible to provide one at ground floor level and potential one in the basement, but that'll need more investigation in regards to the basement. So we'll just put a general condition on, and also an informative regarding hedgehogs on the site that Council Cornwall has previously requested. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you much, Liz. So, James, you're the objector. You have 3 minutes to speak. So to do that, you press the grey button on the microphone in front of you, and half a minute before the end of the let you know come to the end. So in your own time.
Before I start, Chairman, before I start, I would like to hand out 2 documents. They're both submitted by the applicant last year and both in the public domain.
Just speak up a bit.
If I could
a
just
bit closer to you, so we can all might be able to set that.
So I'd just like to circulate 2 documents. They're both in the public domain and they're both submitted by the applicant last year. And I prefer to this, if I may.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Jim. So, sorry, James. I've been told that they are in the public domain on our officers, so that's fine to circulate and look at them, councillors. So if we just get I need one to go on them, please.
Has everyone got a copy?
Not yet, I have got one. So you're saying it's something we've seen already?
Yes, we've got one of them. I think one of them has just been, is up there now, really. This is an extract from the site plan.
So I'll just double check that it's all in the public domain. Just hold on a tick. Sure. Right, thanks very much for that then, James. So
I'll start now.
if you're ready, 3 minutes from now.
So good morning, my name is James Murray. I'm representing the 2 residents' associations for Hills Road and Queen's Way. I will start with the extract from the site plan, which shows how vehicles can access the site from Queen's Way. There's a flat area at point A on the plan.
Sorry, point 1.
Just put the microphone away from you slightly, it's just sort of making a bit of a nasty sound. Yeah, that's good. Thanks. We'll add that.
Is that better?
Thank you very much, yes.
So the site plan shows how vehicles can access the site.
I'm very sorry to interrupt you again. It's just that it was sort of crackling as you were speaking, so about 6
how's that?
inches.
The problem with that mic.
Doesn't work. No.
Is it a problem with this mic? No, the problem is
I'll tell you what, we'll start again. Sorry, James, we'll start again. Just use that other microphone to your left there.
Okay.
Or right, sorry, right. Okay. I do apologise. We're planning to get new microphones, but they haven't come yet, so hopefully.
Is that better now?
Yeah, so I think the best thing
Does
to
everyone hear
do,
that?
yeah, I think the best thing to do is if we start again,
Yeah.
start with 3 minutes again,
Sure.
if you're ready for that.
I am.
Starting like your own, okay.
So good morning, my name is James Berry and I live on Hills Road. I'm representing the residents' associations for Hills Road and Queen's Way. I will start with the extract from the site plan which shows how vehicles can access the site from Queen's Way. There's a flat area at point A which allows large delivery vehicles to park. This leads to a disabled parking space at B, which is 1 metre higher up because the land rises on that side. Straight ahead at point C is the entrance to the ramp, which is covered to protect the slope from bad weather. At the bottom of the ramp, at D, there's a sharp 90-degree turn into the basement parking area. At the planning committee meeting last August, Councillor Thornbury pointed out the maximum permissible gradient on the ramp was 1 in 10, and the slope should be longer to avoid exceeding this gradient. So in response, NP Architects redesigned the ramp, and this is shown on the second document, which is headed basement access. So originally, the ramp started at point F. The architects have extended this by about 8 metres, so it now starts at point G. The entrance to the garage at the bottom of the slope is between points H and I, and is 6.4 metres wide. The ramp continues down until it hits the basement wall at point I, which is obviously impractical and unsafe. The ramp should reach the bottom before point H, so that residents can reach the bottom of the ramp before safely turning into the garage. This means extending the ramp by at least another 6.4 metres, which is the width of the garage entrance. So returning to the site plan, the ramp originally started at C. The architects moved the start line to line A, the red line, which is 8 metres further out. And if we allow another 6.4 metres, so residents can turn to the basement, the ramp will start at line E. Now I think this leads to three further problems. First of all, the ramp will no longer be covered and will be exposed to rain, frost, ice and snow. Secondly, there's no longer a flat area for delivery vehicles. That area at A is now a slope. And finally, there will be a steep slope up to disabled parking space at B, which is about 1.6 metres above the ramp. So I think there are still some problems with the ramp. That's all we have to say today. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Doug. So, Agent Flynn with us will next to speak. So 3 minutes, like I said, grey button, and 30 seconds before the end, you'll get the bell to let you know when it comes to the end.
Good morning, my name is Jim Griffiths and I'm Managing Director of the applicant. We're a small local business based in Queen Edith's Ward, where I personally have lived for 34 years, some 500 metres from the subject property. I know this site very well. It has been unsightly for many years, and the barely visible house is emphatically not a landmark building, as objectors argue. The house has not been deemed worthy of statutory or local protection and does not deserve to be. Since February 2017, we have made numerous costly changes to our scheme at the request of the Planning Department and effectively by this committee. Our application is supported by all consultees and we have ticked every planning box. We were twice required to take part in a development control forum, wrongly so, because it was clear that the campaigners hold fundamental objections in principle to our scheme. Their campaign's primary objective has always been to save the present house, a large single family home for one family on half an acre site. We have been subject to extraordinary levels of delay, frustration and cost throughout this process. We have been falsely accused of profiteering and at times vilified in the press and on social media. We were outrageously accused of being at war with the local community. We maintained from the outset that the council's decision to place 11 tree preservation orders on the site, requiring extensive root protection zones, resulted in it being a completely unviable site for affordable housing. But many chose to disbelieve us. Campaigners...
Sorry, could I just interrupt? This is cutting in and out really dreadfully. The acoustics are awful and I'm having a lot of trouble concentrating on what the gentleman is saying. Can we do something about the
Hold on. Sorry about that. So, you wear a hearing aid?
I don't wear a hearing aid, but this is really grating with me and I'm not able to concentrate on what's being said because of the way the acoustics are working.
Is anyone else feeling that? Or? No. I think it might possibly be a question of the microphone being a bit close to you. So the thing to do, it's not your fault. I mean, obviously the microphones are at full, basically. But I think if you sit back a bit, and just speak about 6 inches or more, 8 inches into the microphone. If you get a bit too close, it tends to like that. And it's a bit distracting, as Peter says there.
So would you like me to begin again?
Yeah. How do you feel about that, Councillor Lord? Would you like to hear it again?
I'll give it a go, yes, please.
So I think I use Chair's discretion and give you 3 minutes again, so you can speak. So Councillor Lord will be surely clear about what was said. If you don't add to what you said already.
No, indeed.
Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay, go from now then.
Okay. Well, good morning again. My name is Jim Griffiths and I'm Managing Director of the applicant. We are a small local business based in Queen Edith's Ward, where I personally have lived for 34 years, some 500 metres from the subject property. I might add that I am a Cambridge-born person and I grew up in Romsey Town. I know this site very well. It has been unsightly for many years, and the barely visible house is emphatically not a landmark building, as objectors argue. The house has not been deemed worthy of statutory or local protection and does not deserve to be. Since February 2017, we have made numerous costly changes to our scheme at the request of the Planning Department and effectively by this committee. Our application is supported by all consultees and we have ticked every planning box. We were twice required to take part in a development control forum, wrongly so, because it was clear that the campaigners hold fundamental objections in principle to our scheme. Their campaign's primary objective has always been to save the present house one single unaffordable family home. We've been subject to extraordinary levels of delay, frustration and cost throughout this process. We have been falsely accused of profiteering and at times vilified in the press and on social media. We were outrageously accused of being at war with the local community. We maintained from the outset that the Council's decision to place 11 tree preservation order on the site, requiring extensive root zone protection, resulted in it being a completely unviable site for affordable housing. But many chose to disbelieve us. Campaigners and ward councillors preferred the easy narrative that said greedy developers trying to evade their social responsibility doesn't care about affordable housing. Very hurtful to me personally as I work with charities that seek to provide affordable and social housing. Now the campaigners seek to undermine the credibility of the Council's independent report on viability by asking why we continue if we've been making a big loss. Well, the report doesn't say we'd make a loss. It concludes that we would make about 600,000 less than a reasonable profit of 900,000. In other words, about 300,000, 5 or 6%. Yes, far too low. The development for small developers is risky, and obviously we hope there will be an improvement in the market, and perhaps we can also achieve some cost savings. I urge this committee to bring this long saga to a conclusion by accepting the clear recommendation to approve by officers. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jim. Sorry about the problems in the microphone again to you and to Councillor Lord. I hope that's okay, Councillor Lord. Thank you very much. So, Councillor Gertie, you wish to speak, or Councillor, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Before I comment on the item, I would like to speak on behalf of Councillor Paige Croft, who has left the room at the moment, to point out that she played no part in the campaign activities related to this item in the ward, and that while she's agreed not to vote on this item, the unfounded claims that she is conflicted are simply wrong. Jenny Sully takes her responsibilities to this committee and to the Cambridge very seriously. And I know that she's quite upset at being excluded from this item. Moving on though, this is the third time we've sat before you and argued against this development. Twice before it's been rejected for failing to provide affordable housing, and I hope that you will do so again today, committee. From the first day of this campaign, I've asked that you eventually find that you're unable to save, if you find that you're unable to save this old house, then you must at least ensure that the planning system works for Cambridge residents and delivers the kind of housing this city actually needs. You might get the opportunity to do some of that later on in this meeting today, but however much the council might be patting itself on the back in press releases later this afternoon, if you pass this application, you'll seriously undermine our new local plan that was supposed to ensure that affordable housing is delivered in Cambridge in appropriate proportion. Instead of which, we find ourselves faced with the dreaded viability assessment, claiming that there's hardly any money to be made in developing luxury apartments in Cambridge, and we can't possibly provide even one so-called affordable unit. I doubt anyone here truly believes that the outcome of offering these 14 flats to be sold at the maximum possible amount will be anything less than a handsome profit. And I might note, for the benefit of the committee, that the house in its current condition was offered for sale at £1.7 million until very recently. Therefore, I would like to note section 6.7 has been mentioned by the officer already. It's on page 47 of your agenda, and it refers to the clawback clause. If the development does manage to deliver more revenue than predicted within the viability assessment, the applicant will need to pay a financial contribution to the council by way of S106 contributions towards affordable housing in the area. How exactly will this work, Chair? Who will be responsible for calculating the revenue figure and levying the charges? If I could have a little more detail around that, that would be excellent to have that in the public domain. It's clear that the development is not in the best interests of its neighbours or the vast majority of workers at nearby Addenbrooke's Hospital. But while huge profits can be made by avoiding the policies of this council for affordably priced housing, the war of attrition that brings us back here time and again to argue the same applications until they finally pass will have to continue. Local campaigns have held this development up in planning for nearly 2 years. It's a campaign I've been proud to support, and I urge the committee to reject the application again today.
Thank you very much, Councillor Garrity. Perhaps the officer could let us know a question about viability and how it works with if there's any sort of profit made from the money coming back to the council. But you can add on to the general questions at the end when councillors are finished, so I'll leave it to the councillor especially now. So councillors, over to you. Yes, Councillor Thornborough.
I'll just pick up the point made by James about the ramp. I've looked into this as well, and I did just want to confirm that the 6.3 metre radius bend corner into the basement, from the information I've got, is from the Institute of Structural Engineers, is too tight a bend for a ramp, but it is the tightest possible bend just for a flat turn into the basement. So I concur that the ramp needs to start after the bend. But I also think that if this application were to be approved, I think a condition regarding the ramp could be added to, so that the issues that have been picked up can be resolved satisfactorily. I have a couple of other, I'm also concerned about the piling and how close the piling and demolition work gets to the existing buildings, and especially number 1A, because the piling starts much closer than 10 metres, because the ramp would need some piling and excavation work to get into the basement. And the environmental officer's report recommends items for the condition that are more onerous than what's actually in the officer's report. So if this application was approved, I would ask that the items that the environment officer asked in his report were added into the conditions already proposed regarding piling. But now going to the affordable housing. So I'm not an expert, and we have reports provided from the applicant but also the council. But I've tried to be as best informed as I can regarding this issue. So I've done quite a lot of background reading on the National Planning Policy Framework 2019, and also the government has guidance on viability and how viability assessments should be presented and considered, and how clear the information should be provided. And I basically do not feel that I have enough information or enough understanding here to make a decision about how much weight should be given to this viability assessment. And some of the information provided by Jim has clarified some of the queries and worries I have about it, when he said that he made it clear that there is in the assessment, basically it's clear that it's a less profit which is being described rather than a loss. But I would like this application, I would like our BNP Paribas to actually come and explain to the committee how this is all being put together, and how this is, why this is not, why this assessment needs to be given a lot of weight, so that and really back up why this scheme can't be affordable, can't provide affordable housing. I don't understand, and I would really like the opportunity for this to happen. So that's my suggestion, is that we have that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thornborough. I noticed a few people standing up at the back of the room. So we've got a couple of seats in here. If you want to see, you can help yourself. There's one there at the table. Take that away and sit on that if you want to. Feel free to be comfortable and have to stand up to the item. Up to you. Your decision.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Tancliffe.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My view is, hear what Councillor Thornborough is saying, that when the Council commissions an independent expert to report, and the report that comes back says that affordable housing is not viable on this site, I think we should accept that. It doesn't seem fair or just to me to constantly question simply because one doesn't like to hear what the experts are saying. Okay, experts are perhaps not very much in fashion these days, but I do think there is a strong case for listening to what the inspector has said. I think from the presentation that we've received, we have heard that the reasons for refusal, which were made last August, have now been overturned by the changes that have been made. And so, from that point of view, I think we should be logical and accept that that is the situation. There are other related issues which I think should be worth mentioning. The existing house could be demolished at any time. It is without merit. I was quite taken aback when I visited the site and saw what an ungainly house it is. And I do feel that the architecture here is sensitive and varied and interesting, and doesn't over-dominate the site, which itself is a very large plot. I would also say that on Queen Edith's Way there are blocks of flats of different sizes, different styles, and I think the whole will in a short while be quite well integrated into the scene. So I do feel that the design has picked up on other forms that are close by, and I think it's not the highest quality, but it's a very good quality, and I think that we should be welcoming this. I think this corner site, sensitive as it is, needs rejuvenating, and I think the tree management policy and the tree planting policy are vital to its success, and I'm wholly in favour of that. And I do believe that all in all, this is a project that we should approve and go ahead with.
Thank you, Councillor Tancliffe. Green, please.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of, I've got a few comments to make on various aspects of the policy, but in terms of the comment about the long drawn-out saga, I think we need to bring this saga to a close, and I don't agree that the application should visit a development control forum meeting, and I don't think we should be looking at minor issues like ramps. I think we should be looking at the principles of this development, this application. And the principle, to me, the overriding principle seems to be the issue about affordable housing. Now, I would like to draw this long-running saga to a close by refusing the application. I'll be very clear. We've got a local plan, a new one, that was published in 2018, and I'll read you what it says. Planning permission will only be granted for residential development on sites where the minimum percentage of affordable housing has been secured on site in line with the threshold set out in the table below. 11 to 14 units, 25%. 15 or more units, 40%. That's a really important policy in our local plan. It's probably one of the most important policies, okay? Because housing is not affordable in Cambridge to a lot of people. We've got this situation where there are wealthy people who can afford to buy housing, a few of those, and they're buying up a lot of housing, and other folk can't afford to get on the ladder. Right, this is why we have an affordable housing policy, and it's why this council is investing massively in council housing in this city. We're pulling out all the stops to provide as much council housing as we can. We're buying land with our precious resources. The government's reduced our core grant to zero, yet we're still investing our own precious resources in council housing. Now that should not allow private developers to then come along and take advantage of that situation by putting in applications which don't provide affordable housing. Okay, the local plan policy applies. Okay, and it doesn't refer, policy 45 does not refer to the requirement for a viability assessment. Okay, it just says will only be granted, okay, if affordable housing is provided. Now, the policy also says that there should be reference to a new supplementary planning document. That supplementary planning document has not been produced, okay? So we have to rely on the old supplementary planning document. And that itself doesn't really lend a huge amount of support to this application. It talks about viability that needs to be in accordance with local government, with national government guidelines. We haven't got that evidence. That the viability assessment hasn't been provided to this committee, only online, so we can't have a discussion about it. We're relying on an SPD from 2013 that is now out of date by virtue of the fact that the local plan 2018 supersedes it. I'm not happy at all with the clawback condition, as Councillor McGurty indicated as well. I don't think it's specific enough. The planning committee wouldn't have any role in that, about how the sums were calculated, should be calculated, what percentage of any profit should be clawed back, and it would be very difficult to manage. I don't think the developers ticked every planning box like they claim to have done. I strongly question whether a development should be going ahead that it's not clear whether or not would even be making a profit. The planning committee report claims that it would make a loss. We're told that the viability assessment was revisited to show that there would be less of a loss than first stated after it was published, and now we're hearing that there would be a small profit. But those weren't the figures that the viability assessment was carried out on. So I think we should be refusing this application and sending a clear message to developers that unless they comply with the local plan, the new local plan, and provide the required amount of affordable housing, they will be refused.
I prefer not to have any clapping because this isn't a show. Councillor Sargent.
Just a small point, Chair. On page 49 and 6.13, the response from the officer says good use of the land in providing 100% affordable housing. Can you clarify? Withdraw that probably.
Which page is that? 6.13, I believe. Councillor Sargent, do you wish to say anything else? Okay. Councillor Bajan.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a perfectly reasonable looking development. It's some more houses or more accommodation in Cambridge. I think that side of it seems very reasonable to me. I, like Councillor Green, am very concerned about the lack of affordable housing. In my mind, the developers have put themselves in harm's way. If you promote a development that is so expensive that it can't be viable to produce a affordable housing, then we should not pass that development. You could put gold taps on, you could have platinum taps, you could have diamonds in the ceiling. That would make it unviable. As far as I'm concerned, the underground car parking isn't an expense that is unnecessary. We live in a city that has recently declared a climate emergency. I understand from my planning training, which I can't remember how many I've been on, but this current one, that climate emergency is a developing material consideration. So the presence of cars on the site in the first place is will become a gradual argument that will lead, I hope, to a change in the local plan. But the fact that they put in an underground car park is an expense that is unnecessary. So maybe they should have built less houses, put car parking if they wanted it on the surface, and then put it forward with a 40% affordable housing. I, like Kelly Green, am not prepared to accept the fact that there is, it is unviable. I want to make a couple of other points. I want to say there's a disabled car parking place in the underground car park. Can anybody tell me that in the event of a fire, how people will exit the underground car park if they're disabled? Because you can't use the lift when there's a fire, so how would a person in a wheelchair get out of the underground car park? Perhaps somebody could answer that. I'm also incredibly concerned as we approach the anniversary of the second anniversary of Grenfell Tower, where councils have completely failed to protect people, that a fire appliance doesn't seem to me to be able to get very far onto the site. It looks like it would have to stop at that curve. Now, that's quite a long distance away from the back of those flats. And I think that is an unsafe practice. There is, I understand also from receiving some training on building control, that there is a developing argument in government that some areas of building control, such as the location and ability of a fire appliance to get close to buildings, will become a planning consideration in the very near future. So I would fail in my duty, I believe, as a councillor, if I didn't draw your attention to that. I will be voting against this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Regent. Any more comments from councillors? So thank you very much, councillors, for putting your comments so well today, and I prefer that to continue through the day so that we can have things wrapped up at the end by the officers without the need to go around the table again. So if you could bear that in mind, please. Obviously you may now have said that, you might want to ask further questions, but let's try not to go round and round. So I don't think that helps debate. So if that's all you've got to say, over to the officers, Dan Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to draw members' attentions to our local planning policy, policy 45, the Cambridge Local Plan 2018, paragraph 6.4, and it's about halfway through. Policy 45 is affordable housing, sorry. Within 6.4 it states, where a developer considers that meeting the affordable housing target percentage will be unviable, robust evidence of this must be provided in the form of independent viability appraisal. This is also backed up through national planning policy. It's a widely used practice. The applicant has submitted a viability appraisal. We don't have the skills in-house to be able to judge whether that's acceptable or not, so we go out to an independent consultant. This cost is then the council paid for it, it's put back onto the applicant. This independent consultant, they do this all the time, this is what they're skilled in, and we set their findings of the viability assessment. As officers, we do not have the skills to be able to look through the viability appraisal ourselves, hence why we're using an expert. In regards to the clawback clause, how this works is that based on the original viability assessment, there'll be a review of that with the actual figures and the costs. What we've asked for is delegated authority to pursue this, and if required, we will secure the commuted financial contribution for off-site affordable housing provision. But delegated authority, the reason why we're asking for that is because lawyers will need to be discussing this, and what the actual wording is, we don't have it yet. So just to round up with affordable housing, we have sought the advice from an independent consultant, and they've agreed with the findings of the applicant's viability appraisal. As officers, we accept that advice. So moving on to building regulations. In regards to the ramp in the basement, I have spoken to the building control team and they're happy it complies with building regulations. However, this is not a planning issue. This falls within building regulations. Same with the fire escape for disabled, persons in the basement, same with fire safety on the site. However, that being said, I know from discussions with building control, generally what happens in the basement is they have an intercom. So because they can't use a lift, they're using intercom, and then it's all done through that. There's sprinklers on site as well, but again, this is a building regulations matter, it's not a planning issue. In regards to Councillor Thornborough raising about environmental health conditions and piling, conditions 3 to 8 of the report are from the environmental health team, and also condition 23. So all the recommended conditions are in there. You might have a look at those and let me know if you want me to answer anything further about them. I think I've addressed everything there. I'm just going to pass to Nigel, who's going to expand on the clawback clause.
Thank you, Chair. I just really wanted to say a little bit more about the affordable housing, because members have said they're very concerned that this does not comply with the policy on provision of affordable housing. I would strongly advise you that this, in my opinion, is fully in compliance with our policy on affordable housing. It does have to be demonstrated that a particular scheme is unviable. I am satisfied that it has been demonstrated. I personally commissioned that assessment. I carefully looked at a range of consultants who had the necessary expertise, and I very carefully kept them at arm's distance from the developer so that it would be entirely independent. I've had many discussions with those consultants about the detail of that viability, and I'm absolutely satisfied that this scheme is not viable, and that has been demonstrated through the proper channels by an independent consultant. I think if members are minded to refuse the scheme on the lack of affordable housing, that we potentially open ourselves up to a risk of costs at appeal, because the evidence would suggest otherwise. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Have you finished with us?
Sorry, Chair, can I just add one?
Yes, go ahead.
The applicant has provided details regarding the viability of the basement car park. It does not affect the viability of the scheme, so it'd still be unviable to provide affordable housing even if it didn't have the basement car park. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Following that, even though what I've said, I'm sure someone wants to say something. Any more points from councillors? Yes, Councillor Thornborough. Let's try to sort of one last go round, I think, please. Thank you.
So going back to the government advice about viability assessments, they state very clearly that the viability statement should refer back to the local plan and the soundness of the local plan. So our local plan was found sound less than a year ago, 10 months ago, and there was evidence and it was seriously considered so that the affordable housing clause was appropriate and found sound. And any viability assessment, according to the government guidance, should be clear about what has changed since the local plan was found sound. So I don't believe that this viability assessment actually shows what has changed from 10 months ago to now. The other thing is the government guidance also is clear about what is to be included in the viability assessment and how it is to be set out so that it's absolutely clear so that everybody can actually understand it. And I don't believe the assessment is clear. I don't believe that it meets the government guidance, and I don't understand why there is absolutely there is a profit, and the figures show that there is a profit, and Jim has shown that there is a profit. So I really don't understand why the officer is saying that there will be a deficit. So I feel that this viability statement is questionable.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thornborough. Just before we go on, this chap here at the side of the table, it's fine to have a chair, but just sort of pull your chair back from the table, please, because we're not actually in the debate. Yeah, you. Thank you very much. Thank you. It doesn't really matter that much, but I think it's just to be clear who's actually in the debate here. Thank you very much. Councillor Bajans.
Thank you, Chair. I may not have phrased a proper question, so let me put it another way. Is it viable? Is it allowed for somebody to design a site that is actually unviable? You know, that's what we seem to have. We have a site that's unviable, or is argued is unviable for 40% social housing, for affordable housing. So why can't we reject it on the basis that it is unviable, and the developer go back and produce a plan that is viable?
Yes, so more councillors want to speak, but I'm just going to let Nigel Blakesby, delivery managers, come in on that point. Thanks, Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of, has this site been designed to be unviable? When the site was first designed, so in terms of the basement car park, for example, there was no question in the developer's mind about the need for affordable housing because they believed they were below the threshold. So the site has not been deliberately designed to be an unviable site.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Benjamin, is it directly relevant to that point? Yes, go on then.
Okay. But the requirement for us that's been suggested to us, because there's an independent report on how this site currently is, that we should be passing it. Shouldn't we be questioning that the site needs to be redesigned and that the plan is not viable to us within the terms of our local plan because it doesn't provide affordable housing?
Thank you, Councillor Benjamin. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean it's quite a simple point, really. The developer has produced a scheme which is an all singing, all dancing scheme with underground parking, and because of the exuberance of the scheme, they now can't afford to provide affordable housing and still make a profit. That's quite a simple concept. What it means, if we approve this application, what it does is set a precedent so that other applicants, other developers, any time they want to build a number of flats, just have to provide underground parking and say, oh, that's it, we can't afford affordable housing. I'm sorry, but we've got to open our eyes here. We've got to make sure that as a planning authority, we do our job and get that affordable housing delivered. And don't let developers off the hook.
Thank you very much for that. Any more points? No, Lewis, did you need to say anything in response to those points? Perhaps, yeah, okay, go ahead. Just having a bit of chat then. So we'd like to speak. Nigel Lewis, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So the affordable housing viability assessment has been assessed by an independent consultant. All we can do is accept their findings. I understand that members may feel it's against policy, but the policy does allow for a viability assessment to be submitted if the developer considers that meeting an affordable housing target percentage will be unviable. In regards to redesigning the scheme, we can only look at the scheme in front of us today and the information that's been provided for that scheme, not start redesigning and saying they need to reduce units, etc. So this is the scheme in front of us for 14 units, and the applicant has demonstrated that the scheme cannot provide any affordable housing because it's not viable. I think that just rounds up the answers.
Thank you. So I'll just say that I'm going to vote in support of the scheme, following what I've heard. I'd just like to remind councillors we're not here to talk about politics, profit, except in relation to the viability assessment, and other matters that are not related to this scheme. For example, setting a precedent, because precedents aren't really a big deal. It's really more to do with the national planning policy framework and our policies and local plan. So what I see is a fairly good-looking scheme. I wouldn't call it architecture, but it's good-looking. It can fit well on Hills Road in the context of the site. It provides housing that is fit for purpose. All of the local, our local policy space standards have been met, and also national planning policy framework space standards. Obviously, this has been a long journey. But I think here we're going to a conclusion with a vote on the scheme, and I hope that councillors will bear those points that I've made in mind, obviously, as well as the points that other councillors have made around the table. So, Councillor Bajan, you want to say something?
Are you summing up or providing a personal view, Chair?
Well, I think chairs do tend to sum up sometimes, but I'm not trying to dissuade, as I said at the end, I'm not trying to dissuade you from taking all points into consideration. All the councillors on the table have said what they need to say in terms of getting questions answered by officers, and also communicating with other councillors around the table, and I'm doing the same. Is that fair enough, Councillor Agent?
I have no objection to either, I just asked you which it was.
Well, people can make their own mind up about that. So, the officer recommendation is one of approval. All those in favour of that recommendation? Okay, stop that. I've been told something by the officer, so I just need to check that the 3 verbal conditions that the officer added will be added onto the...
Do you want me to do the recommendation?
Yeah, you do that.
So the officer recommendation is approval, subject to the prior completion of Section 106 agreement to secure planning obligations, delegated authority to pursue a viability review mechanism and secure a commuted financial contribution for off-site affordable housing provision if required, and the conditions set out in the committee report, including additional conditions regarding boundary treatment, electric vehicle charging points, and an informative regarding gaps in fences, etc. for hedgerows.
Thank you very much for that. Thanks so much, James, to make that clearer. So let's go again then. So the officer recommendation is one of approval. All those in favour of that recommendation?
4, Chair.
All those against?
3.
Any abstentions? So that's carried.